Nagkaroon ng bagong aligasyon ang China laban sa Pilipinas. Sinasabing nakakita raw ito ng barko ng Pilipinas na armado sa Ayungin Shoal. Sa gitna ng tumataas na tensyon sa pagitan ng China at Pilipinas, naglabas ang China ng panibagong akusasyon laban sa Pilipinas. Ayon sa CCTV o kilala din bilang China Central Television, noong nakaraang buwan, may nakita daw ang Coast Guard nito na mga armadong tauhan na nakasakay sa barko ng Pilipinas. Ito daw ay nangyari sa Second Thomas Shoal o kilala din sa tawag na Ayungin Shoal, ngunit hindi nito tinukoy kung anong barko ito. Samantala, ang China ay wala pang nilalabas na larawan o video na nagpapatotoo dito. Ito naman ay kasalukuyan pang kinukumpirma ng mga news agency ng Pilipinas sa Philippine Navy, Philippine Coast Guard at sa iba pang ahensya ng gobyerno. Ating matatandaan na ang China ay nagsabi na simula ngayong Hulyo, gagawan nila ng aksyon at aarestuhin ang mga trespasser sa South China Sea. Gawa naman ng pagiging labag nito sa international law ang Pilipinas ay nagpahayag na hindi nito kikilalanin ang bagong patakaran na ito ng China. Samantala, isang matapang na pahayag naman ang binitawan ni President Bongbong Marcos nitong Biyernes sa Singapore Shangri-La Dialogue. Base sa kanyang pahayag, ay puprotektahan niya ang karapatan ng Pilipinas sa West Philippine Sea, gayon din ang pagprotekta sa mga Filipino. Kung sakaling mas lumubha pa ang tensyon sa West Philippine Sea, dito natatawagin ng Pilipinas ang mga kaalyadong bansa, pagpapahayag ng Pangulo. Kabilang sa mga kaalyadong ito ang Amerika, kung saan mayroong Mutual Defense Treaty ang bansa. Nakausap din ni Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro sa sinasabing Shangri-La Dialogue ang kanyang mga counterpart official mula sa mga bansang Lithuania, New Zealand at Canada. Ang naging sentro ng kanilang usapan ay tungkol sa pagpapaunlad at pagpapalawak pa ng defense security at kooperasyon ng mga bansa. Ayon kay Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro, sa aming pagpupulong na pag-usapan natin ang posibilidad ng pagkakaroon ng defense and military training on cybersecurity para sa Pilipinas. Sinasabi na ito ay isang magandang oportunidad para sa Department of National Defense at Armed Forces of the Philippines. Sa gitna ng mga agresibong aksyon ng China sa pinag-aagawang teritoryo, tiniyak ni US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin ang buong suporta ng US sa Pilipinas. Bukod pa rito ang pangahas na aksyon ng China na malapit sa bansang Taiwan, isang bagay na pinalagan naman ng China. Ayon sa China, hindi daw ito makakatulong sa sinusulong na regional cooperation sa Indo-Pacific region. Matapos ang pagbibigay ng keynote address sa Shangri-La Dialogue ng International Institute for Strategic Studies sa Singapore noong Biyernes ng gabi, May 31, nakuha ni Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. ang kanyang unang tanong mula sa isang Chinese military general na nagtanong tungkol sa pag-uugali ng Pilipinas sa South China Sea.
Mr. President, I noticed in your speech you mentioned many times about ASEAN centrality. You review the TAC, which your father signed, that showed the bond of ASEAN. I think the ASEAN centrality is very important, but we cannot take it for granted. It comes from the ASEAN way, the three principles. First, mutual respect. Second, consensus building. Third, considerate other parties' comfort level. In my words, to put it simply, we can summarize it as three no's: non-intervention, and non-use of force, and non-hyping up hot spots. Only because of these principles strictly followed by ASEAN members and other stakeholders that we have ensured the ASEAN and East Asia at large for a long-lasting peace since the end of the colonial rules in history. So we cherish a lot. I fully agree with you. I support the centrality of ASEAN. And even some professor like Cassius Mark Boni, he suggests ASEAN is deserved to award the Nobel Peace Prize. I agree with him.
Thank you very much. I think your question is, do you agree with me? So President Marcos,
Yes,
please.
my
Thank you
question
very much.
is, President, in the eyes of the international community, some of your Philippines' behavior in recent times, it now sounds like you really consider other parties' comfort level, and there is a risk of ruining the regional long-earned, long-lasting peace since the end of the, colonialist history. What's your comments on that? Thank you very much.
Well, I cannot imagine what you must be referring to if the reference or the allusion is to the Philippines somehow tearing apart what we have agreed on with in terms of ASEAN centrality. Quite the contrary. I think if you examine more closely the remarks that I just made, I precisely focus on ASEAN centrality, and that the principles that are laid down that are involved in the concept of ASEAN centrality are some things that we must use to guide us. And if we have been distracted in the past years or so, then it's time for us to return and remember once again what ASEAN was created for. And that is to create an aggregation of nations that have very many common interests, and that can be, and that partnerships within that multilateral organization can help each other and help the region. And so the Philippines is still remains true to the principles that were established and upon which ASEAN was born. And I think, as I said, that many of these things we no longer speak of today, but we must, because they are as relevant today as they ever were, perhaps even more so, because the global situation is a great deal more complicated than it used to be before. I would even go far as to say there is no such thing as a regional issue any longer. We have all experienced the unexpected effects of the war in Ukraine, of the conflict in the Middle East, and all of these. And when we talk about the South China Sea, we have to also remember that the South China Sea is the passageway for half of the world trade. And therefore, the peace and stability of the South China Sea and the freedom of navigation of the South China Sea is a world issue. And that is what I am proposing. And I am saying that yes, it is a regional issue, but we must examine and be part of the discussion. We must include all parties in that discussion, because now it is not just ASEAN member states who are stakeholders, and it is quite easy to see that it is in fact the entire world that have become stakeholders in the peace and stability of our region. On pressing strategic issues confronting our region. I also thank the government of Singapore, especially Prime Minister Wong and Senior Minister Lee, for providing an environment that is conducive to this dialogue. The notion of Shangri-La conjures up a mystical sense of tranquility, of free souls living in peace and harmony. And it may sound like a wishful concept, but it is symbolic of a continuing dream, an international community that lives in peace, upholds the rule of law, and enables all nations to thrive in pursuit of their respective aspirations. We Filipinos are paragons of this dream. Our history reflects our commitment to the values that engender amity, fraternity, and sovereign equality amongst nations. Our commitment to peace and to the rule of law inheres in how we have defined our sovereign home. When we established our Commonwealth in 1935, we put together a constitution that defined our territory in accordance with the international treaties that became the basis of our archipelagic unity. The Treaty of Paris between Spain and the United States crystallized our islands into a cohesive whole. The Treaty of Washington clarified the extent of our sovereignty and patrimony and a line set by international powers. We sought to uphold and preserve the integrity of our country's physical unity through international law. Together with others, we put forward the Archipelagic Doctrine, which regards all archipelagic states as a single unit, with the waters around, between, and connecting their islands, irrespective of their breadth and dimension, forming part of their internal waters. This doctrine has since been enshrined in the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or the UNCLOS. The same convention also clarified the limits of each state's maritime zones and defined the extent with which they could exercise sovereignty, their sovereign rights, and jurisdiction over those zones. Accordingly, we have made a conscious effort to align our definition of our territory and our maritime zones with what international law permits and recognizes. This has been inscribed in Article 1 of our Constitution. As Senator, I was proud to co-sponsor our Archipelagic Baselines Law, which defines the basis of our maritime jurisdictions. As President, I look forward to signing our Maritime Zones Law, which will clarify the geographic extent of our maritime domain. Our efforts stand in stark contrast to assertive actions that aim to propagate excessive and baseless claims through force, intimidation, and deception. In the West Philippine Sea, we are on the front lines of efforts to assert the integrity of the UNCLOS as a constitution of the oceans. We have defined our territory and maritime zones in a manner befitting a responsible and law-abiding member of the international community. We have submitted our assertions to rigorous legal scrutiny by the world's leading jurists. So the lines that we draw in our waters are not derived from just our imagination, but from international law. We have on our side the 1982 UNCLOS and the binding 2016 arbitral award, which affirms what is ours by legal right. In this solid footing and through our clear moral ascendancy, we find the strength to do whatever it takes to protect our sovereign home, to the last square inch, to the last square millimeter. The life-giving waters of the West Philippine Sea flow in the blood of every Filipino. We cannot allow anyone to detach it from the totality of the maritime domain that renders our nation whole. As President, I have sworn to this solemn commitment from the very first day that I took office. I do not intend to yield. Filipinos do not yield. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not only unyielding in protecting our patrimony, our rights, and our dignity as a proud and as a free country. We are also firm in our commitment to regional and global peace. We renew this commitment at this turbulent juncture of our history. I will repeat what I said at the United Nations almost 2 years ago. Amidst challenging global tides, an important ballast stabilizes our common vessel. Our open, inclusive, and rules-based international order is governed by international law and informed by the principles of equity and of justice. For the past 79 years, this rules-based order has allowed our region to flourish. The stability and the predictability that it has engendered has been crucial to the success of the stories of our region. Be it the post-war revival of Japan, the economic miracles of Korea in Southeast Asia, the rise of China and of India. When this world order was built in 1945, our forebears vowed to make the floors of the United Nations the last battlefield. We made a determination for humanity to survive and to never again be wiped out in another Holocaust. The Philippines has always been part of that history. Amidst the rubble of war, we were there, amongst the architects of the new peace. We stood on behalf of colonized peoples of Africa and Asia. We opposed attempts to dilute the inviolability of the right to self-determination. We helped enshrine the right to independence in the Charter of the United Nations. In 1982, we led our global community in unanimously adopting the Manila Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of Disputes. This affirmed that differences amongst nations must always be solved peacefully through legal and diplomatic processes, never through the threat or the use of force. Today, these norms are under significant stress. The world is facing a watershed moment. In our region, recent patterns of aggression and militarization and emerging arms races threaten our lands of promise with an uncertain future. In the midst of these significant shifts, I see 7 realities in the Indo-Pacific. First, the future of our region will be determined by many nations, each with its own unique experiences and aspirations. Yet, their respective agencies are being challenged by attempts to undermine our faith in prevailing international norms. Second, the strategic competition between China and the United States is permeating the evolving regional landscape. This rivalry is constraining the strategic choices of regional states. This contest is exacerbating flashpoints and has created new security dilemmas. Third, the region looks to ASEAN as the institution that will hold the center amidst these evolving dynamics. Yet, challenges threaten our unity and our centrality. Fourth, as geopolitics continues to permeate the global governance infrastructure, the role of bridge builders have become increasingly important to forge decisive multilateral solutions. Fifth, the global commons will continue to be crucial to the security of all states in the region. Access of developing countries to the high seas and to outer space and the peaceful uses of science and technologies is crucial to international development. Sixth, climate change remains a deadly challenge for the region and for the world. It is the first truly global threat, and for the first time, we face a crisis that affects every single human being on Earth and requires action from every single human being as well. And finally, the development of advanced technologies is rapidly transforming human life and experience. These technologies will solve many of our old problems, but they are so powerful that they also have the potential to disrupt our political and our social orders. These 7 realities muddle the waters that we have to navigate in our collective journey as a community of nations. We cannot reverse course. We must persevere. We must push through. The current juncture does not call for a revision of the regional order. Instead, it calls for the reaffirmation of the wisdom of San Francisco in 1945, of Bangkok in 1967, and of Manila in 1982. Let us return to San Francisco and reaffirm the sovereign equality of all states. We must reject unjust narratives that seek to subsume distinct national interest in a so-called major country dynamic, which seeks to impose a hierarchy amongst nations. Those who came before us worked painstakingly throughout the last century to bury the era of spheres of influence and of buffer states. We should not allow its ghost to haunt our region once again. Let us also return to Bangkok and support ASEAN's effort to build a rules-based, people-oriented, and centered on regional community. Any state that professes a stake in the continued peace and stability of this region must respect ASEAN centrality, not only with words, but with action. All partnerships and arrangements must never displace or dilute, but rather uphold and complement ASEAN's central role. So let us return as well to Manila and reaffirm our common understanding of how international law governs the peaceful settlement of disputes. Amidst misleading narratives that seek to discredit international legal procedures, there is a need to reaffirm those modalities are an expression of good faith. They are a service to the progressive development and codification of international law.